Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this special session on implementing the climate deal. And I want to thank you for staying late with us. I know after a long day, you get very tired, but this is a very exciting subject. We have a great panel here with us today, and I'll introduce them very briefly later on. And this session is about implementing the climate deal. And last year, in December 12th, and world leaders from nearly 200 countries, they reached a historic agreement in Paris. And 6 months into the agreement, now we're wondering where we are right now and how the companies and countries are doing now and can do in the future to implement the deal. With us today for this conversation, we have 4 panelists here, and let me just introduce them very briefly. From my left-hand side, Ted Chu, Chief Economist of the International Finance Corporation, the World Bank, and Professor Zhou is the Deputy Director General and the National Center for Climate Change Strategy and the International Cooperation under NDRC, and Sandra Wu, he's here representing her company, Kokusai Kogyo company in Tokyo, and my right-hand side, the co-chair of the World Economic Forum here with us today, and also the CEO and chairman of the managing board of the Royal DSM from the Netherlands. Let me just start with you, Professor Zhou. And since you were involved for the entire process of the international climate talks, representing China, and also since then you have been advising the Chinese government, maybe you can help us to set the stage here. Just name maybe 3 or 4 major challenges we face in implementing this climate deal. We know everybody is so excited about the deal, but now we're cooled down, and we need to get back to the real hard work. And what are those challenges?
Climate change itself is a challenge, and then we start from one challenge to another. The negotiation is also a challenge, but now we reached the agreement finally. Essentially, we reached 3 specific agreements there. Number 1, to establish the ambition, the targets, at the global level and the national level. So we call it the nationally determined contribution. So by my knowledge, for the moment, most of the parties, over 180 or even 190 parties in the world, they set up their nationally determined contribution at national level. And the second agreement is to set up the mechanism to ensure enhancing the ambition. We call it no backslide. That means as a whole global mechanism, we will ensure ourselves to move forward continuously. That's a very strong message to the whole world, including investors, including practitioners. That means the ambition should be higher and higher over time.
You think that's possible?
So through a specific mechanism, we call it the global stocktake mechanism. That means regularly, essentially for each 5 years, we will review the performance, we will review the adequacy for the efforts, and then to consider how to update the ambition, the targets for global as a whole. But certainly that also will be reflecting for national targets. This is the second agreement. The third agreement is cooperation. The whole world will cooperate with each other, especially between developed and developing country, between government and non-governmental parties, including enterprises, including NGOs, civil societies. So I think those are the major elements for the Paris Agreement.
These are all sound great, but are there any roadblocks, any obstacles now, for implementation?
And to answer your question, I think we can look at the specific countries. I just take China as an example, for example. So we just set up, launched the targets for the 13th Five-Year Plan. So in fact, the 13th Five-Year Plan is much higher than, in terms of the carbon intensity targets, it should be much higher than the Copenhagen-Cancun pledge made by China, 6 years ago. That means just to take carbon intensity as an example, for Copenhagen and the Cancun pledge, it's 40 to 45% reduction against the 2005 level. But according to the 13th Five-Year Plan, it has been raised to 49 to 50% reduction. So that means we will overachieve our targets against the Copenhagen and Cancun targets, per our 13th Five-Year Plan targets. And these will provide for higher starting points for our Paris NDC, naturally determined contribution.
But that's good news. Are you suggesting China should have pledged even higher target for this carbon intensity?
Yeah, at least for the coming 5 years. So we enhance our ambition. But I would assume, given that new starting point, so we will have some outlook for the post-2020 ambition. But certainly for the moment, it's a little bit too early to make the judgment. But we become more optimistic for China to set more ambitious targets post-2020, towards 2030. So as you know, in Paris Agreement, we have our own nationally determined contribution targets. 60 to 65% reduction of carbon intensity, and 20% of the non-fossil fuel energy in primary energy, et cetera, and also peaking year.
All right.
Yeah, around 2030, but make our best to reach the peak as early as possible. So those are our targets there. But now, yes, today I know the central topic is how to achieve that, how to implement that. And again, with China as an example, along with the process of implementing the 13th Five-Year Plan, along with some policy agenda, one of the examples is launching the national carbon market next year. So now we are working very intensively to prepare all the documents, all the regulation to make the national carbon market happen next year, together with the combination of other policy instruments, for example, we are also considering to move forward for environmental tax, including carbon elements. But certainly I know this will be a process, and also to develop some standards, norms for, sector by sectors.
Right. You already mentioned this instruments, the carbon market, and also the carbon taxation. Let's get back to you on that a little bit later. Now let's move from the government sector to the private sector. Sandra, you started your company to address these issues, help the government, local and central national government, for this green development and resilience and sustainable development. And from your point of view, what your company is doing to address all these targets, set in the Paris Agreement.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Well, as Joji just said, I mean, the government, nation, country has their goal, and for the private sector, for me, as I can only speak as a private sector perspective, and for me, well, our co-chair, Feike, is a great leader, put a lot of efforts to get almost like 100 CEO from the WEF to sign a climate CEO letter. What we say is we are not waiting for the government to give us the instruction or the targets to go. We will take our action. So, and last December, when the COP21 is negotiating for the Paris Agreement, actually our company was preparing our 5 years plan, our 5 years business plan. So our board, we are talking to each other, say, why don't we take advantage of this SDGs and the COP21 and Paris Agreement to review our business plan. So what we did is we review our business plan and we try to achieve not just only the economic goal, the profit goal as well, but also to address those challenges globally.
So you're saying you make your company's 5-year plan, your strategic plan, inconsistent with this world agenda, SDG, and the Sustainable Development Goal, and this Paris Agreement.
Yes. Actually, our company, we have a vision. Our vision is green community. So we have been focused on those green growth and the green community, for example, that environmental, energy, urban development, infrastructure management, et cetera, et cetera. So when we review the business, not we are creating a new business. What the existing business we are doing actually is addressing those climate change issues. So we take it from the mitigation, we look at it from the mitigation and adoption. And we realize that we have a solar power plant and we have a green community, eco-town, building together with the local government. We have, we're working together with the local government on the forest protection and work with the other private sectors on the intelligent transformation system, et cetera, et cetera. And from the adaptation side, actually our company, long history in our company. As you know, Japan is a disaster-prone country. We live along with the natural disaster. For in the 70 years history, our company is very focused on the disaster reduction management, or this day we move to the more disaster risk reduction management. Actually, in some countries, not just only the mitigation, the adaptation is also very important. And since the climate change, we reassure our business. The focus and the track is right, but we really need to enhance, for example, for the monitoring, evaluation, or the measure. Because if we want to achieve the target, we need to know what is the target, how to measure it, and how we can achieve it.
You know, Sandra, I want to just interrupt a little bit. I assume your company is making profit, right? But I'm curious, you just said your company, you have a vision to build these sustainable, green, and resilient communities. But some CEOs may say, well, that is like a public good. Right? That's the responsibility of the government or NGOs. Why a private company is doing that? But I think my question is more on the how side, right? How you actually make, what kind of a business model you run, you can actually make profit, right? Make good profit, for your stockholders, whoever, by doing this sustainable business.
I cannot answer you. This is the enterprise secret, so I have to answer you on. But I do receive a lot of questions, your first question. But I don't answer directly, because I don't care about what the other CEO think about. I only care about what our company, because I think this is a growth strategy. If we don't go that way, we probably are out of business. And I have to say that this is the first mover actually is taking the advantage to, enhance the company competitiveness. To me, it's differentiation and how our company can move fast to provide a solution to those needs.
I like that concept, first mover. Speaking of that, I want to move to you, Feike. You wear multiple hats, of course, and just introduced here on this forum. But in addition to serving as the CEO and the board of managing board in Royal DSM, who itself is a first mover in many different areas, you also wear this hat with this carbon pricing leadership commission under the United Nations. Let's start with the private side, right? How much what Sandra just talked about, you think you would agree, and what else you think the DSM from the private sector, the first mover or other strategies, or you can share with us. Now, I hope you're different than Sandra, and she's so worried about sharing her business secret. Tell us a little bit about the business model, then everyone else can share from your success.
Thank you. Right.
You can look from different angles. You can look from the private sector. You can also look from society. And would like to come back later on Paris, whether we should be happy or not happy. I think it's a turning point, but we should not be totally happy on Paris. But let me first move to the private sector. I totally agree with Sandra. But see, you don't want that, but for the discussion. But what she is doing and what I'm doing with our company is making the company future-proof, trying to prevent that we have our own, what I call Kodak moment. The companies who are not preparing right now for a future with a price on carbon, for a future which your emissions are not unlimited, for a future which is without fossil resources, for a future with new forms of energy, those companies, and maybe they are in the room or maybe they are especially not in this room, those companies who are not preparing for that future will not be future-proof, and at a certain moment, like Sandra said, run the risk to be out of business. Now, if you believe that that future is coming anyway, you better be, like Sandra said, being a first mover. So I think it's very wise to prepare your company for that future. The writing is on the wall that a price on carbon will come. I will stimulate that from my hat on the World Bank and the UN, but it will happen even without my stimulants.
But
so if you don't prepare on
that, right? That's future-proof.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a different concept than what Sandra was talking about, right? For her sustainable communities. So, are you guys saying that by setting the future-proof for your company, or vice versa, by working on sustainable communities, you can actually make a good business sense?
I don't mind so much from which conviction or from which philosophy companies come from. I mean, I come also from the philosophy that it is my responsibility as a CEO, that it is my responsibility as a company, that it is our responsibility to future generations, that it is our responsibility to our children to address this. But if you do not have that philosophy as a company, and some do not have that philosophy because they think incorrectly that this is a governmental task. If you think incorrectly that that responsibility is a governmental task, I have another argument for you to do this and to make your business future-proof. So there's always an argument for business to make this next step. Now, coming back to Paris, a few words. You said we're all excited about Paris. Yeah, I'm also excited.
I hear some reservation from that.
Exactly. I think Paris is a turning point, and the fact that it was bottom-up with the NDCs is a real important point of the Paris Agreement. And I think it will turn later on that Paris was the moment that we really made the switch from the fossil age to the biorenewable age. And we will recognize that Paris started that moment. However, in a couple of years, we will evaluate the NDCs.
And if all countries do what they promised, we will be close to 3 degrees Celsius increase of temperature. And we said in the same Paris Agreement, it should be limited to 2 and preferentially 1.5. And we said with 2 or 1.5, we run already enough into difficulties, and with 3, totally. So, and that is only if everybody does what they have promised in Paris. And maybe some countries will do a little bit less or delay or whatever. So I think, and I totally agree with Xiaoji, that in a couple of years we will evaluate where we are, and we will come to the conclusion that we are not doing enough to implement our own Paris Treaty by our own Paris agreements. There's a kind of iterative thing into the agreement. And therefore, more actions will come. Governments have to be more strong. A stronger pricing on carbon will come. And those companies, coming back then to the consequence of the private sector, those companies who wake up in 2020 or 2025, where is this all coming from? I'm not allowed to do this. There is a price on this, etc. I would say to those companies, the writing was on the wall already since 2015. You were asleep, you missed the point, bad luck.
Let's put in your other hand for a moment. The serving on this CPLC.
Right.
You think the carbon price, or how you think the carbon pricing work under that committee can actually help businesses like yours or like Sandra's?
I think that the price on carbon is a facilitating tool. It's not the solution, it is a facilitating tool. And what do we do with a price on carbon? We incorporate the thinking about climate and the thinking about our responsibility into our economic system. And that is what we need. So far, we are dependent on the goodwill of CEOs, the goodwill of CEOs like Sandra and others who take up their responsibility. This is not good enough. And for investors, even very difficult. For the financial sector, difficult. So we need to incorporate in our financial and economic system. And by putting a price on carbon and preventing, by the way, that we give fossil subsidies, more than $500 billion a year. We should stop with that immediately. By putting a price on carbon, we facilitate, because there becomes an economic rationale to switch from fossil to other resources. There becomes an economic rationale to work on alternative energies. And our company uses already for more than a year an internal price on carbon. We don't pay it because there is no price on carbon. In Europe, a little bit, and the rest of the world, hardly anything. But we use an internal price of carbon of 50 euros a ton. And I tell you, if you have that price, it triggers your imagination, it triggers your investment decisions, it triggers on where you want to go as a company. And I would advise more companies to do. We incorporate the responsibility and the thinking about our climate into our financial system.
Let's continue that worldview. I would like to shift to you, Ted. Being the chief economist for the IFC, and we all understand that IFC and the World Bank has been the leader in this climate financing. You're probably in the best position to tell us, really, how much money do we need to address this climate change problem, both mitigation, adaptation. So we know, of course, this $100 billion, but from your professional view, maybe in a plain language, you can tell us really how much do we need, and in addition, where can we get this money?
Very good question. I think there is no absolute number of dollars that can be defined as what's needed. Obviously, the more money, the better, right? Committed to climate change issues. I think the way that we're raising money are through multiple channels. For example, issuing the green bonds, which the Chinese government, the central bank of China, and IFC are working on issuing green bonds and raising money. We're also doing a lot of things in mobilizing the private sector money through, for example, what we call the blended finance, that using the public funds to take on the risk tranche of the investment, so then the private sector money will be coming in to finance green projects. So there's no absolute number, but I think the challenge today is that the global economic growth has slowed down. We have seen both in the developed countries and developing countries slow down in productivity. So how do we make sure that economic growth, improving people's lives, and climate change issues get addressed simultaneously?
So that's this $100 billion. So what do you feel about this? This is just about right, or you think far from enough?
This is a good number to be rallied around. Right?
So where we are right now to come up with this $100 billion now, are we almost there, or we're far from enough?
I think we're getting there, but right now we're facing a few challenges. The first one is I already mentioned, that there just isn't sufficient investment in the global economy today. Climate or not climate, just not enough investment. And I don't want to go into the details of the reasons why there's a lack of investment. The second is that the sharp decline of fossil fuel prices, particularly oil prices, since mid-2014, has really made it economically more challenging to promote renewable energies when the conventional fuel prices have been coming down so fast. And in addition, I think the energy cost, the renewable cost has been coming down, but there are linkages in the financial system that in the energy system where the improvement is still not fast enough. For example, in the energy storage area. So those are the bottlenecks we need to be getting resolved.
Feike, you have...
Well, the 100 billion, to put the 100 billion in perspective,
right.
The 100 billion is by far not enough. And please correct me. The 100 billion is the only small number which the richer countries will pay annually to the more developing countries by 2020. So that is only a small facilitation. It's a huge number. It's a small facilitation of the richer countries to the poorer countries. If you look what is needed in total, it is much more than that. There is already 500 billion annually on fossil subsidies. That need to be replaced as well. If I take a little country as the Netherlands, only on overall mitigation, overall adaptation, so not mitigating climate change, but adapting that climate change will happen. Recently, a budget of 25 billion was released to increase the dikes a little bit in the Netherlands that is needed, otherwise we have no country anymore. So those kinds of things are there. So if you make the calculation, it is a multiple of that. And it is also needed, if we don't do that and postpone it for 25 or 50 years, it will be even much more than that.
That is a very big discrepancy here in between a number 100 billion and 500 billion, not to mention the number you said for the country of the Netherlands. I want to ask Professor Zhou Di here, I mean, in the negotiation, I know this is a very, very tough subject to negotiate on. So really, what are the problems here for this, coming up with this sufficient financing now? And why do you think the Chinese government wants to come up with a $3.1 billion US to set up that South-South, the South-South Fund for climate change cooperation?
In fact, that's two things. One is on multilateral basis. As you said, 100 billion or post-2020, starting from 100 billion, I mean, an increasing year-based fund. But here, we just mean the financial flow from developed country to developing country. I mean, as you're saying, the 100 billion. Yes, it's far from adequacy, and by my knowledge, this is the result of negotiation. This cannot reflect the real needs for finance. But certainly, something is good than nothing. And I would like to see 100 billion if they will, we will reach this target, can play a role as a catalyst or seed fund. Because the 100 billion, now for the moment, there are two understanding. One is the main source will come from public finance. And another understanding is, we mobilize 100 billion from all the sources, public and the private. Anyway, 100 billion, if we can reach that, these can be used to support our some policy instruments, like, for example, tax credit, for example, some subsidies, or some fund for R&D, etc., etc. But they should be linked to much larger capital market or private finance. So this is the way out for mobilize or leverage the whole financial flow into sustainable and climate-friendly domain. And by the way, I try to make some example. For example, we regard public finance as nerves, while private finance as muscle. A nerve is very, very light, very tiny, but it can control and also guide the muscle, the private finance. Otherwise, the private, enterprises. So private finance, without any guidance, without any enabling environment, it will flow into real estate, flow into high profit field, rather than, not necessarily to climate-friendly field. But certainly, this also leads to another task for the government. How to create the right policy environment to make private make money for climate-friendly investment. So that's a very, very important thing after Paris.
Right.
Yeah. So all the country governments, they should start working on enabling environment. For example, carbon market or carbon taxation or some necessary regulation and information, MRV system, capacity building, etc. Those will create some enabling environment to guide the financial flow to the right places, climate-friendly domain.
Right. You talk about all government. We have to mention the government of Japan, and because Japan is a significant contributor to this climate financing. Sandra, I would like to hear from you that, looking at Japan, the Japanese government, through JICA, through other agencies, what do you think this contribution from the Japanese government, maybe also the private sectors as well, to this climate financing to help actually build these sustainable green communities that you so much care about, and both at home and also abroad?
Well, Japanese government, they do provide a lot of facilitate to address the climate change. So they commit to the Green Climate Fund. They also commit to the DRR fund, and as well as through those.
Where's the money from their government budgets?
Yes, from the government, and also through the JICA, they will provide those buy or the yen loan to those developing country, and also they commit a lot on the development bank as well. But I agree with Joji say that all this actually is catalyst, and to really penetrate the climate change activity from the I would say not just only the private sector, but I think the whole society as well. And I would like to clarify that, yes, I think I do care whether in the future, all the society, including CEO, including the citizen, including the local government, whether we all can come together to have an inclusive and one solution, one plan to address these climate change issues. Because I think all this, we have to all work together as a collaboration to come up with this right solution to move forward. But what I say previously is at least someone have to take the lead. So finance is very important. And I believe that the government also have to take the role as a leader, to take the lead position, and also to design and provide the governance and the policy. And then definitely the private sector or the other sector will come together to work together. I think that is the way to move forward.
So now here from this conversation, we are not only just dealing with the threat from climate change to address the damages and losses from this the change of weather, extreme weathers, climate extremes, but also we're at a very crucial point in the history, and where we need to really to transform the way we do our business, the way we grow our economy, and we are moving towards Sandra just mentioned this climate-friendly economy to a green economy. And you have some point to add.
Yeah, I would just like to further add on what I say now is because we all work together. We provide service to government. We also provide services to the corporate clients and the individual. So if our clients, they don't understand the importance of the impact of the climate change, then no matter how we utilize the new technology or to provide the right solution and that. So that kind of awareness have to be created. And not just only the clients, but also our supplier and our contractor, or even those the downstream, the
whole
group,
entire
right? The whole
chain.
value chain.
Right.
So what I emphasize, someone to have to be the first mover, government, private sector, or the policymaker, and then we come with the whole society, and this awareness have to be shared and understood by the whole society.
So we do need to create a new business model and new ways of financing the business and their activities. Ted,
and also new development path.
That's exactly. I understand in the last decade, the IFC did some very interesting work with some partners here in China in helping the energy-serving companies, for instance, through providing the guarantee for the borrowing, for financing these energy efficiency programs. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about, from the IFC perspective, some of the innovative ways of helping the business and for helping this green transformation through a climate economy, through a green economy.
So our overall approach is that we would like to address both climate mitigation as well as climate adaptation. And in the latter field, we have been working on, for example, the green building. Right? So we have a program called EDGE. Right? It is excellence in design for greater efficiency. So designing the green building can conserve energy. And regardless of what the energy cost or the prices is going to fluctuate, you can benefit over the long term. We are also have been in recent years very active in the solid waste and in the solid waste area to generate electricity by burning the solid waste and save space for the disposal, because the Chinese land is becoming more and more precious and valuable. And the other area that, going beyond China is that we have launched a major initiative called Scaling Up Solar. to really provide extremely affordable solutions of solar energy to address the fact that there is still more than 1 billion people on Earth without access to electricity, with our focus in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia.
How are these measures different than the ways of financing in the past?
These ways do not conflict with creative financing. So what I'm saying is that going beyond creative financing, we are also finding other solutions. When you look at climate change, it's really the entire ecosystem, entire production system, and entire society that needs to be involved. The other area that I'd like to mention is our advisory services in providing education, providing information. For example,
knowledge and know-how. Providing the knowledge and know-how.
Providing the knowledge and know-how, and providing the information that so that consumers and companies will not automatically choose the option or the solution that has the lowest upfront cost. So you look at the lifetime cost of your energy solutions.
Thank you. Let's open up the floor to invite some questions from the audience. So please identify yourself and let us know whom your question is addressed to. Do you have the microphone? Right. Yeah. Any questions from the audience, or do you have anything you can share? Yeah, please.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this very helpful conversation. I just would like to ask a question which is somewhat a side dimension, but if we look at some of the news that has been coming through recently, there seems to be a bit of a decline in belief, in sentiment around the benefits of globalization, of global trade, of a global society, and a bit of an increase in national protectionism, a bit of a retreat, a little bit behind national barriers, and of course Brexit pops to mind here. Do you see any concerns when it comes to fighting climate change that this is an indication that it will be even harder than we were thinking, or you don't link the two?
Who would you like to answer this question?
I would love to hear from all, or whoever feels a feeling on this. Sorry, this is not
or maybe
one in particular.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so actually, I do share your concern. In fact, years ago, we tried to suggest a sort of stimulus for trading renewable equipment. So as you heard, there have been some trade conflict on solar panel, on wind turbine. But my concern is with the current circumstances, this kind of trading we will have more barrier on this kind of trading. So this is one thing, and another thing is about tax. I mean, adjusted the border tax, but certainly for the moment it's just in the I mean on the level of discussion or debate, but these might become a sort of trade barriers. But anyway, my point is we should provide for more convenient, more favored condition for especially for renewable trading. So in that way, we can cooperate each other. I mean, for global solution, especially to create a public good. I mean, climate protection as a public good. Yeah.
Mm. Maybe a small reaction, because I think it's a very valid point being raised about the protectionism. And what I found, if you combine the two things a little bit astonishing, is that recently in several European countries, the summer started. And the summer nowadays starts with much more rainfall than ever before. and most likely that will continue. And we got in several countries, including ours, a lot of complaints because parking lots were flooding, cellars were flooding, etc. And several people said, hey, it is really serious with climate change because I have now for the second time my cellar full of water. And here you see, if it comes very close, the people start reacting. Well, don't tell to the people in Bangladesh, don't tell the people of the Horn of Africa, because they know already for many years that climate change is real, and they virtually cannot live there. And where we are now struggling with the migration of people who are refugees because they live in war zones, I think soon we get a multiple factor of refugees, not 60 million refugees now in the world, but maybe a couple of hundreds of million refugees in the world due to climate change. And that goes a little bit further, with all respect to people who have a flooded cellar, but this goes a little bit further than the cellars. And therefore, I think it is inevitable that we cannot close the borders and we need to collaborate, but we need to address the concerns of the people. And let me link it to one thing of this collaboration, is that we, at the end of the day, innovate and develop new things. Because Mother Planet, who is just below us, looking to us who live on Mother Planet watches our discussions about target setting, about financials, and all those kind of things. And Mother Planet thinks, well, by target setting itself, I'm not helped. By financials itself, I'm not helped. I'm only helped if you really have a different energy provision tomorrow than today, and done your innovation. So we have this big project, Mission Apollo, which is now called Mission Innovation, with several countries collaborate to. I would like to stress this point, multinational, multi-companies, collaboration on innovation, on getting things done, because we cannot hide behind our dikes.
So that's a very, very important point. The climate change is indeed a global threat, global problem. It takes the whole world to address it. Then isolationism certainly is not the answer. Real quickly from
I just
Sandra.
want to add
Right.
one point is,
Right.
also I think the climate change things and the natural disaster issues and sustainable development goal, actually they're all linked together.
They're all linked
We
together.
cannot just deal with it standalone. At least I think for the country, as a national plan, you have to deal with it together. Unfortunately, you have a different department, different minister to handle that. But for the corporate, we do have to deal with this as a whole. We cannot just look at one issue, one project. This is for the climate, this is for the disaster, and this is for the economic growth. And because all in the future, everything will come together. I think that is very important.
So,
and also, this is also global cooperation.
So in other words, that's a matter of sustainable development.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Let me, if I may skip you, Ted, I would like to say that in our program, as you can see from your program here, Minister Xinsheng was supposed to be with us for the discussion. Earlier today, he went back to Beijing to attend a very important meeting at the State Council. I really appreciate you made the effort to come back to join us here. It's a really very kind of you. And Minister Zhang is the president of the International Council for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And he also been leading and chairing this Guizhou Eco Forum over there every year. And we really need your perspective. Here you can see we have people representing the government and the international organization and the private sector, but we need the perspective from the NGO, especially international NGO. We're talking about this implementing the Paris deal, right? So what do you see the challenges, especially what you think the international NGO can actually help in pushing for this implementation? I know you have some idea about taking the opportunities of G20 this year, but you may have other broader ideas on all these issues. What would like to hear from you?
Moderator, Professor Ye. I'm sorry, but I should thank the transportation. By the bullet train, I still be able. Back in the noon, now I catch the last minute. Sorry, I did not hear what you say. Must be wonderful. And I appreciate all the audience here. It's already over 6, but you're still here. You show all the consensus and awareness about how much serious this climate change it is. Yeah. Well, I'm president of IUCN, the world's largest and the earliest organization. We are IO, means we containing NGO, about 900 members, and also government members, state members. So we are 140 members throughout the world. Thank you. Why this matter is so serious? I think that World Economic Forum now promote fourth industrial revolution. So for this fourth, I would call it green industrial revolution. Right? Before Paris Agreement, I was really worried. I said that the world is not at a crossroad, but the world is at a tipping point. Now, after Paris Agreement, and also Sustainable Development Goal 2030 Agenda in New York, I would say world aspires to real transformational change. What do I mean by transformational change? Number one, it needs a strong political will, not just pay lip service, okay, the action, because this is a year of implementation and a year of action. I'm glad to see that quite percentage of the countries who attend Paris already signed in New York in April, right? And I think still I will start by the challenge and the major issue. I think number one, still the political will, okay? And number two is the governance. Piecemeal, sectoral approach, short-termism, still rely on GDP, even though they know that, of course, I do not totally, against the GDP, but nevertheless, it's misleading, since real plus 20, right? And so particularly the political system, just 4 years. So they are difficult to really commit for the long term. But 2 degrees is really serious. What do we mean by 2 degrees before industrial levels, Celsius? I give an example. If we continue to consume emission CO2, GHG, we can only live and consuming and production like today's for 24 years. If 1.5 degree, we can only do things like today, business as usual, 12 years. So after 12 years, nothing, euro emission. So it's very serious. And secondly, what do 2 degree means? If a 2 degree here, in the mountain, it means 4 degree. It's 2 degree, it's already 40 to 50% of the species will died. Okay. So, but we men can never live without nature. Nature can live without us, men and women, right? So this is
Even better.
I think, very serious issue. I still think political will and governance. Number 2 major issue, I still think the awareness about it. And I do hope all the sectors, all the country, all the companies, all the level has to action in one voice. Number 3, I think major issue is still policy. Paris Agreement and the SDG 2030 already stressed so strongly, got to integrate economic development, environmental protection, and the social progress as a whole. So totally integrated. But I now still see that. For instance, G20 just a meeting in Xiamen. But environmental protection, nature conservation still treated as a sector. Yeah. Our moderator yesterday when we argued, he knows that. It never be mainstreamized. It's still treated as marginalized, even though they are think so much importance. So if it is not institutionalized, mainstreamized in the Minister of Finance, the chairman of NDRC, like China's Planning and Reforming Commission, you can never really policy-wise implement it because it's still seen as a long-term one. Okay. Not see that so much urgency. And number three, I think the way of approach, how to do it. I agree with that. Technology are so much importance. Engineering are so much importance. But there is still limitation of the growth. For the past 60 years, we rely on so much on technology. Okay. We think growth is unlimited. But unfortunately, the carry capacity of this Earth ecosystem is limited. Plus that we already have 7 billion of the population. In 50 years, we'll be 10 billion. If everybody live in the average lifestyle like Chinese, it will be 1.2 Earths we needed. European, 2.5 of planets we needed. American style, 3.5.
That's a very hard reality.
Yeah,
right?
so very, very, very serious.
Right.
Okay, so how is approach? I think so many strategies, but what we have not discovered and give sufficient attention is to know the powerful nature. What IUCN we promote as a nature-based solution, to give sufficient recognition of the nature system, including land, soil, ocean, forest, wetland. You see now in Tianjin or in Beijing, how many wetland we have, how many lake, percentage. In Beijing, Zhongguancun used to be Haidian. What's meaning Haidian? It means wetland. But now it's all cement land. Yeah, so nature now punishes us. 100 years ago, Friedrich Engels and Hegel said that when man starts to conquer nature, it enjoys achievements by conquering the nature. But not too long, when man continue to conquer the nature, it will be punished by nature.
I think that's a very important message. You just gave us, just considering the time, if you don't mind, I cut you off. And I think that the IUCN, the N is for nature, and we hear from you loudly, nature can live without us, all right? But we cannot live without nature. But still, I want to, maybe I can get some questions answered, asked. We may not be able to answer them. Yet I want to hear just some question, right? Identify yourself, please, and...
Masato Takamatsu with GTB Tourism Research and Consulting. I'm in the travel and tourism sector. And I fully support Sandra's comment on the green, having vision as the green community. And reason, also being in private sector, I think the one of the most influential stakeholders among us is the stockholders. How to convince the strategies such as having vision as green community will be supported by, agreed by the stockholders. It's a real big issue. And how, I want to ask Sandra, how do you convince your stakeholders, including the stockholders, that is the importance of being the green company?
Sandra, if I may ask you to answer the question afterward, because of the time, we have to finish here pretty soon. I want to just highlight some very important point here, which is a common challenge, and the nature is not only climate change, but also natural disasters and other common challenges. And we really need a new business model, new model of finance, new governance by the government and civil society, and for innovative growth, economic growth and development. And I want to thank all of our audience here for being with us to stay late. I want you all to join me to thank our panelists for your great contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.